All right. All right. Listen, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining. This is the Wednesday in the Word Bible study time frame for the St. Paul St. Elizabeth Faith Community. This evening, we are having a remix of our Wednesday in the Word. We are engaging in a panel discussion, a dialogue on the influence of the Black church. And I have the blessed privilege to be able to share with a few members who grew up in St. Paul, United Methodist Church here in Meridian, and have moved away and gone on with doing wonderful things in their personal lives and professional lives. And this dialogue will center around the influence of the Black church in terms of the shaping and nurturing of individuals' faith. This comes on the heels, as I mentioned, this comes on the heels of the first segment of the Black Church docu-series. This is our story, this is our song. Also, this comes during a time where we are, as Saint Paul United Methodist Church, we are celebrating the 155th anniversary of the church. This church was founded on the first Sunday, or established, organized on the first Sunday of February in 1866. And again, this year, this faith community will celebrate 155 years. The significance of that, particularly here in Lauderdale County, East Mississippi, is that St. Paul is one of the oldest Black Methodist churches in East Mississippi, certainly the oldest in Lauderdale County. And in terms of the Mississippi Conference of the Methodist Church, St. Paul is the flagship church. And grateful for the number of persons a number of churches that were birthed out of this congregation. So listen, thank you all very much for engaging and sharing with our time together. I want to step aside and start to have this conversation with our guest this evening. I want to set kind of the context or provide a preface, and then we're going to introduce our guests. And we're going to have one of those, we can't call it old-fashioned because I don't know how many virtual reunions we've had in the past, but we're going to have a virtual reunion in terms of sharing our faith. First, I want to say that this particular subject matter is dear to me. I come out of a context or church that's very similar to St. Paul. My home church, Wesley United Methodist Church in Los Angeles, is the mother church of Black Methodism on the West Coast. As a matter of fact, all of the United Methodist churches in Los Angeles were birthed out of the church in which I was raised. The second part of that makes this so dear is what in the 4 years I've been serving as pastor of St. Paul, each time we've had some form of gathering and these persons will return, persons who grew up in the church. I experience the same thing when I go home. It doesn't matter how long we've been away from each other. Our experience at church created such a bond that we are more than just friends who attend church together. We are very much like family. And that's what I experienced or saw here at St. Paul and has allowed me to grow and develop this affinity towards the church. And that's what this is about, to put this on display so that others will recognize how important it is for the church, but it's unique in the Black church context to help shape the faith of individuals. So I want to introduce, I'm going to start with, my grandmother taught me to be a gentleman. So I'm going to start with the ladies and then introduce the gentlemen. First, we have Miss, listen, I'm going to ask Miss Antoinette to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Antoinette Washington, formerly Antoinette Alexander, growing up at St. Paul. I currently live in Dallas, Texas. and kind of just grew up in St. Paul. I currently work here in Dallas, Texas, work for an automotive company on the corporate side, and definitely love seeing all the faces. I think I might have been kind of in the middle with coming to St. Paul. My family moved from Chicago, and they were members of South Line United Methodist Church there, and then we moved to Mississippi and joined St. Paul. So I definitely, it has a very, very warm spot in my heart and very near and dear because I got to meet so many great people and had so many great influences.
All right. Thank you. And next we have Miss Iris Sims.
Good evening. I am Iris Sims. I, of course, grew up in St. Paul. We started going to St. Paul United Methodist Church when I was 7 years old. We moved from Gary, Indiana, here to Meridian, and St. Paul became my church home. I am currently the Chief of Staff for the NACP, based in Baltimore, Maryland. So I live in Maryland, just outside of DC. And St. Paul has certainly shaped my entire life and everyone that comes from St. Paul. It is not just a church, it is absolutely family. And I'm very grateful for all of the experiences that I had growing up in St. Paul because it certainly shaped who I am today.
All right. And so, all right, brothers, do we do age before beauty? How do we handle the two of you on? We'll go alphabetically.
Go ahead, Gordon.
All right. All right, Brother Gordon.
I'm not sure if that means I'm age or beauty. I don't know which. So I'll just take it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Anyway, I'm Gordon Greenwood. I was born into St. Paul. My mother was raised in St. Paul, and my grandmother was also a member of St. Paul. So it is the first church that brought me into Christianity, and it was just a wonderful place to have been born into and developed and nurtured. And I guess we'll address a lot of those questions as we go today. I'm presently a lawyer. I practice right outside of Oakland, California. I came out here in about 30 years ago and said I was going to stay 5 years and never left. But one thing also that's never left me is my experiences at St. Paul, and they will never go away.
Awesome. All right, brother.
Hey, good evening, family. My name is Horace Crenshaw Jr. Of course, I am just so honored at this opportunity to talk and share and discuss about the influence of St. Paul United Methodist Church on my life, and of course, in my walk with the Lord. I grew up in St. Paul. We started attending St. Paul in 1981. And I immediately started joining different groups within St. Paul. You know, we had the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. I was a part of that, and was, well, of course, instrumental in the youth. I was on the usher ministry there. So my little brother, of course, you know, he was also, we were both very involved in St. Paul, of course, and my parents were as well, too. So currently I live in Stafford, Virginia. This was about 30, 40 miles south of Washington, D.C. So Iris, you're right up the street from me. I am a retired military officer with 23 and a half years of service. Also, currently I work for the Department of the Air Force, work for the Joint Strike Fighter Program. I am the Foreign Military Sales Security Cooperation Program Manager with this particular program. Also, I have various activities on the side. Of course, the church that I attend now, I'm a deacon in that church, Harvest Life Changes Church. I am an author, have published 2 books, with the third one that I'm working on. I'm also a certified golf instructor, so I also teach golf on the side. So it's just so such a great opportunity that I have to share with the community in terms of the influence on, the Black church and just me in general, and of course in my walk with the Lord. Thank you so much.
That's pretty awesome. We have a couple more that's going to join us in the midst of this conversation. So listen, this is what one of the first things I want to ask and kind of put out in the to the virtual audience. Share a fond, one of you all share a fond memory of growing up in Saint Paul on the Hill. Now, people in Meridian have an understanding of what that phrase, Saint Paul on the Hill, infers. So again, as we've already mentioned, there's a historical significance of this church is, in my opinion, unmatched here in Mississippi. But specifically here in Meridian, the influence of the people who were members of this church, and kind of people would have to walk upright when they walk down 13th Street and past this hill. And so I can only imagine what kind of experience or stories that you have as children growing up in the church on the hill. So kind of share, one of you all want to jump in and share kind of a story, flashback of what that looked like for you.
Well, I'll jump in first. For me, it's very simple. It started with a great deal of nurturing that happened right down there in the basement in that little old raggedy classroom with Miss Georgia May Sims teaching all of us Jesus loves me, this I know. And that's where the nurturing started. And the nurturing continued until, you get into your teenage years, 13, 14, 15 in there, and it transitioned some. It sort of went from a lot of nurturing to a lot of accountability. That is, that the church, that God has put a lot into all of us, and therefore that we are called to serve others, and that we are called to, as my brother used to say, go out and make something out of yourself. And so there's just a lot of church folks around. Ms. Marguerite Oliver is one who comes to my mind, who just look you in the eye and just demand that you go out and make something out of yourself and pay back the church, the Black community, and God himself for all the nurturing that he provided to you. I guess in some respects, I mean, the standards were very high. I can't say that I perceived that as a kid. That was just the way things were supposed to go. This is to church every Sunday. These were the women mostly of the church who required that of you, and that's what you were supposed to do. And so as I've gone out into the world, that same level of accountability, that I was going to say cloud, but that just sort of ray of sunshine that hangs over you, that says you've got to go out every day and show and share with the world all that God has given to you. And so, as I said, I've never forgotten that. It stayed with me all day, every day.
All right. Anybody else want that flashback?
I would actually follow Gordon. I absolutely agree that St. Paul set very high standards for each and every one of us. And we were nurtured in a certain way that I don't know that others were nurtured in. A couple of people come to mind who absolutely took me under their wing in the church. Miss Mayola Turner. And of course, you all know my godmother, Iris Jordan, as I call her Aunt Iris. But Miss Turner took me under her wing and required certain things of me. She helped make me into the leader that I am today. There was a club, the Cinderella Club, that I was a part of. It was sponsored by one of the clubs that she was a member of. Having the church connection, the social connection, we were required to serve and give back and understand that we needed to serve the underserved. Um, there were a lot of fun activities inside the church as we were singing in the choir on the third Sundays. I didn't like singing in the choir. I chose to usher. So we were ushering, singing in the choir. We were also doing lock-ins, and we went down to the coast to, I believe it's Waveland or Waverly. I don't quite remember the name. Um, but for different events, we were a family growing up during the time that I came up in St. Paul. Um, and those experiences have just honestly, again, made me who I am today. Education, it was, you got to go further. You got to move out of Mississippi, or just do whatever your heart desires, and we're going to make sure that you get there. I am very clear to this day that I am where I am because there are so many people that have prayed for me, that continue to pray for me. People that I don't even know are praying for me, want me to succeed. So it is absolutely still my responsibility to do everything that I can to be the best that I can be. And I 100% contribute that to my upbringing and my faith and the foundation that St. Paul set.
Yeah, I definitely concur with what Iris and Gordon shared. I think it was being involved with the Boy Scouts, which of course led me to, of course, ultimately join the military. The influences of Mr. White, who, you know, when he passed away, I got a chance to stand at his casket, and the honors that he was bestowed upon him. You know, that kind of made me, you know, want to, of course, transcend from that point to, you know, become a leader, as well as some other influences. Of course, you had the influences of Reverend Henry, who, when we first joined the church, he was such a profound and monumental man, you know, and he just left such a spiritual imprint upon me, as well as when Reverend C.E. Appleberry allowed us as youth to go up and read the scriptures during services. I think that helped guide me into the person I am today, loving the opportunity to get up and speak before large audiences and speak before people. You know, I think that I got that. That was St. Paul was the building blocks for me, not having that fear of speaking in front of people. So, you know, actually, you know, getting the opportunity to come back home and share my story, you know, of, you know, my college experience, you know, in front of so many family and friends there right after I graduated from college. So, you know, from that, you know, to the high school graduation recognition, you know, receiving a Bible before going to college. I mean, St. Paul just really, really left such a monumental imprint and impression upon my life. And of course, like everyone shared, you know, I mean, it set a standard. You know, you had to be a certain way, and there's just so many different experiences I can just glean from, you know, my experiences at St. Paul. You know, where I am today is truly a testament from, you know, for all the people at St. Paul that were praying for me and leading me and guiding and directing us, you know, in those Sunday school sessions as a young kid, young boy, you know. So what can I say? It's just it's great.
All right, Sister Antoinette.
Oh, I was just going to, you know, not add very much, but one particular story that comes to mind that kind of goes back to the accountability. I remember on several Christmas occasions, Christmas is really big at St. Paul. It's as big as Easter. And I always remember in high school, Miss Jordan would, you know, let everyone know ahead of time, you know, we're going to do caroling. And, the date would be set in stone, and you were held to a certain standard to say, hey, you understand that this is a commitment and you're serving the community through song. And it was always a cherished moment. I think about it oftentimes during Christmas time that, we went to the sick and shut in, we went to the different nursing homes, and we were able to bring, some sense of joy and that high standard of knowing that St. Paul on the Hill is still amongst the community. And that was always present in a lot of the leaders that were in the church, and that they made you accountable. If you said, hey, this is an actionable item and I'm going to commit to this, they held you to it. And it was always something that I absolutely loved. And oftentimes, even in my day to day, where I have mentees of my own, I always let them know, don't take on more than you can handle. Always remember that, you have integrity, but you also have accountability. And I would not have been able to have that understanding if I had not been kind of put into the fire, so to speak, with, making sure that I didn't matter what I had going on, if it was band, if it was singing in another choir for something else at St. Paul, to make sure that if you're going to do something, make sure that you stick to it.
Man, that's awesome. Here's what I would like to kind of jump in and again, you all just jump in as you are led. One of the benefits, I can't think of a more appropriate word than benefit in my life, was the church. In that, the church created a space for me to learn who I am. My neighborhood had one vision of me, or one idea, or created a space for me that was not necessarily the best space for me. I believe it like that. But the church created a space to help me to realize who God created me to be. And offered grace when I didn't live that out, as consistently. And because of that, my development into my professional life, it's seen, not just because I'm a pastor, but even before becoming a pastor, the shaping of the church developed me in my professional life before being pastor full time. What I want to hear from you all is, and you've kind of given some hints about it in terms of persons. Where do you reach back to your St. Paul time to help you with these decisions and to help you with your moral compass today? And I'm careful with my wording, because what we're not trying to do tonight is celebrate the church as much as we're celebrating the Christ that the church poured into us and shaped our faith. So this is not so much putting St. Paul on a higher hill as much as it is recognizing that God used the church, used these people to help shape us so that today we have a moral compass that otherwise, had we not been a part of that church, or had that church not poured into us, we would not be where we are. We know we still have some miles to go, but we certainly would not be able to celebrate what we do today. So I wanted to kind of ask if somebody can jump in here. The specific question is the role that your faith development at St. Paul play in your professional life today. We got Dr. Sims with us. Hey, Dr. Sims.
Good evening. How are you all?
Well, I'll jump right in. Definitely, professionally, I would say that it's really taught me to be, being at St. Paul taught me to be an accountable Christian. And I say accountable Christian because it's just not always, making sure that you're in church every Sunday, or making sure that you're, singing in the choir, or you're steward, or you're, reading from the lectern, the Bible verse. It's just not those, kind of going through the motions, but actually being present and accountable in the teachings and understanding that there are people around you that are suffering, or there are people around you that need your help, and that you as a Christian have to be able to step in place and be a servant leader, step in place and be maybe that beacon of light. And it has transformed from the time that I left St. Paul in high school to going to college. That was really pivotal for me. And even on to law school and even into my career, I always took that with me to make sure that I'm accountable and that I have, you have those little voices, the sweet spirits in the back of your mind that are reminding you, but you also know that coming full circle, that I need to stay and maintain and be an accountable Christian.
Good
I'll
afternoon.
jump in. Go ahead, Doctor. I'll follow.
Hi, everyone. Jamie Sims here, and I am the Senior Science Advisor for Artificial Intelligence in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Of course, my sister Iris Sims is here, and I think I heard her when I was online earlier talk about, our history with St. Paul. One thing I would like to add to what Antoinette said, in addition to, of course, having that faith background, growing up in St. Paul, we had the opportunity to really and truly learn about public speaking. The things that we would do during Youth Sunday when we were called upon to read scriptures, even the things that we would do as an usher, those things actually spill into the workplace. A lot of my work includes public speaking and being put out there, to lead programs in St. Paul, and having, the teachings that we had about, how to present yourself and how to voice deflect. All of that was taught to me, through St. Paul at an early age. And I really appreciate those teachings as well.
Well, first, Reverend Bowie, you mentioned just kind of the parallel between what we learned in church and what happened at school. I think the Meridian in St. Paul was very unique in that way. There was no difference in the moral standards in one place versus the other. And the reason was very simple. It was the same people you saw at church were the same people you saw at school. I mean, my sixth grade teacher was Miss Horace Crenshaw, who was a church organist. The librarian at the school was Miss Mayola Turner. You just run into the same people everywhere. So you couldn't, play by one set of rules on Monday through Friday and then come in on Sunday and try to play by a different set of rules. It was all the same. And so those same moral standards that you learned on Sunday went with you to school on Monday. And in terms of nowadays, I mean, I guess I'll go back to those George May Sims and Margaret Mitchell years. Once they put it in you, you can't get rid of it if you try. I mean, once you start living a certain way and seeing God a certain way and fellowship with God a certain way, there's no getting rid of that. And so you just feel blessed to have had it, because I couldn't shake God if I tried.
Yeah, absolutely. They put you on a straight and narrow. Everything that we did was in excellence, and it was done with love, of course. And yeah, that's one of the things that like I said, I totally would not be where I am before if it wasn't for certain some of the tenets, the traits that came from St. Paul. My love for government came from Miss Jordan, because she kind of pushed me into getting involved with the close-up program at high school and coming into DC. And ironically enough, I ended up living here in the DC area, the DMV we call it. So like I said, just getting up, public speaking was no problem for me. and of course I've had to speak before, large audiences, of course, having to motivate and influence, U.S. Army soldiers to carry out a task in a war zone, miles and miles away from family, with, in harrowing conditions and terrible conditions was my faith was definitely, I had to definitely stay prayed up. And of course, I learned that, at an early age, from my experiences at Saint Paul United Methodist Church. So, I'm thankful for that to this day. And of course, I carry those particular traits on to other places I've been, being involved with church, being involved with, the fellowship. And so, even though, I was always away from St. Paul, the tenets and the teachings that St. Paul is still in me at a young age, kind of, transcended over into where I am today.
Yeah, and I think that's a critical piece. But Iris.
Absolutely. I agree with all of my brothers and sisters here. For me, St. Paul helped with my leadership. As others have mentioned, the public speaking that we were taught to do, reading scriptures, leading programs, just leading others. And who knew that I would work for the NACP in this day, in this time, in this moment, and all that we have going on. So working in my current position, looking back on the teachings and my upbringing, the leadership skills, my sense of community, learning the need to care for others and serve the underserved, and just simply being kind to others, but also being grateful for the privileged seat that we sat in and that we still sit in today, because we're all successful individuals. We learned, or at least I learned, that we have to pull others with us and continue to serve our communities.
Absolutely. I think that's a piece that there are two things I want to say quickly as we transition to this last question. And my heart is full because there's been a consistent theme that I think the church has been historically, the Black church has been top notch in planting in our hearts, and that is grace. Not only God's grace towards us, but the grace that we extend to others. That as we progress, we lift as we climb. As we progress, then we think of others, and it just again does my heart wonderful to hear that. Gordon mentioned something that I'm going to transition to this last piece, and that is the consistency. So you couldn't act like Bam Bam at church and then act like an angel on Sunday morning. Why? Because Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so saw how you conduct yourself at school. And if the word didn't get to a parent, matter of fact, the word didn't have to get to a parent, they get to you themselves. They didn't get to you at school, they'll put you on blast at church. Where am I going? There's this close relationship between the school and the church, but specifically, the Black church reflected the neighborhood, and we're not too far removed from that. We're talking maybe, I'm not gonna put y'all age out there, but we're talking maybe 20 years or so when you all were younger, and so we're only about maybe 15 years removed from that dynamic when this. I helped you out, bro. I helped you out.
40 years.
Here, right now with the pandemic, it is clear that the church is never going to go back to the way it was. I mean, and that's the bottom line. Specifically, the Black church. We're having to make modifications that we never foresaw, and that's bottom line. So how moving forward, how do you see the church, the Black church, being able to, kind of reclaim? 'Cause honestly, that's where we are, having to reclaim that space where we are in relationship with the schools. We reflect the neighborhood. From your perspective, I want to push you just a little bit before I let you go. How do you see what ways do you see the church, the Black church specifically, being able to kind of reclaim that space of being connected to the schools and being connected to our neighborhoods?
I'll jump in here first. I guess I'll say simply we have to be creative, and creativity is not anything new for us. I can remember my time at St. Paul when Reverend Henry came and he did some radical stuff. I mean, he put a basketball goal in the parking lot and put a ping pong table and a pool table in the basement of the church to attract young people. That was radical. That was creative. It was very effective. Ms. Lillian Duber, she was, I think, our 5th grade Sunday school teacher. She did something extremely creative. As opposed to having Sunday school at the church, she made us come on Saturdays and we made fruit baskets and we went out to the homes of the sick and the shut-in. We had Sunday school in their homes on Sunday morning. It was a way to reach people who couldn't reach us at church. And that was just creativity. And so now here we have this pandemic. I mean, it just requires us to be creative all over again. The uniqueness of the Black worship experience is that it's very interpersonal. It's very present, and we surely miss being with each other in church. I mean, the Zoom worship services, I'll just be honest with you, I've just gotten tired of them because you just want to hear a choir sing and really feel a preacher preach. And it just calls for us to be just super creative, maybe in a technological sense. I mean, we've got a PhD in artificial intelligence here. I'm sure she's got some ideas. But maybe church services will be outdoors like they were in my grandmother's days. But it just calls for us to just dig a little bit and figure out kind of how we can be a little bit more creative. I mean, God has given us so many generations of creativity through the years that if we really believe in him, I mean, how can we doubt that he'll give us a new level of creativity in response to this pandemic? So it's the promise is there. I mean, and he's taken care of us up till now. So I just feel there's a new level of creativity just waiting to wake up within us, and we'll figure it out.
I agree. The first thing that came to my mind was living like Jesus. And I say that because, you look in the Bible and Jesus went to where the people were. And so, the church can be anywhere you make it. It's about what you're doing, not being in a building. And there are so many needs now. As the short time that I've been on the call, one of the things that we've talked about is how we learn community service through Saint Paul. And that's something that, we'll have to continue. And that may mean, putting together those care packages, finding out what the community needs, and then supporting them in that way. Actually, a small group, even with staying distant, but take a care basket to one of our members if they need it. Those types of things. Find out what the true needs are and then reach out to the community in that way. Even with the schools, it'll still take people actually, connecting with the students, connecting with the teachers. That connection can't get lost, even though, we're having to do it in a way that we would prefer not to. I completely agree. I am zoomed out through work and church and everything being on the computer. And I'm an introvert, so it's surprising to me that it's starting to get to me, not being able to connect with people. But, even if it means St. Paul picking up the phone and just saying hello versus sending an email or a text, these are different types of ways that we have to stay connected during this time and going forward.
Yeah. Anybody, that community service piece, connecting with the community is so huge. Meeting people where they are. I know that's almost becoming an antiquated phrase, but the reality is, especially right now, meeting people where they are actually now takes on a new meaning. And so we definitely have to reimagine church, and pray for those pastors who are trying to help reimagine church.
You are in our thoughts and prayers.
No shade. Anybody else?
Definitely.
Go ahead, Horace. You want to jump in here, man?
Well, yeah. So, I think that you still have to get engaged. I share that sentiment with everyone. That I'm zoomed, I'm zoomed, Microsoft Teams out. I'm WebExed out. We do so many, because that we have to look at different ways and strategies. And there's nothing like, just picking up the phone and just calling people. I think we've gotten away from that. The society has just totally gotten away from, picking up the phone and contacting someone to see how they're doing. We're so technologically savvy that we've technologically savvied out of ourselves, So, I think that, we have to get back to that warm embrace somewhat, definitely in this day and age with this dreadful pandemic that we've all had to endure last year. So we can do it. We can do it. Our faith is strong. We have to just be like Job. Just have that faith. That no matter what happens, we're going to continue to trust God and believe. So, yeah.
Just one last point to everything that's been said. Yes, we will continue to meet people where they are, and we need to, as we get back to our new normal, as we learn it over the next several months, we will get back to church. We will get back to the physical space. But as we meet people where they are, we have to realize that not everybody's zoomed out. So we're still going to need to do the virtual sessions. I don't think that it needs to just go away, but we do need to bring people in and have those activities that Gordon mentioned, and reach out and touch people via the phone and the care packages. We need to do all of that to continue to have the Black church relevant. We just can't go back to the old way of doing things, because churches around the country have also gained followers through all of this because they're able to watch via Zoom and watch virtually. So we need to embrace all the methods of worshiping as we move forward. Pastor, you're on mute.
You're on mute. You need to get more pastors who are technologically savvy.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, listen, we said meet people where they are. I'm meeting them where they are. Listen, that's some really good stuff. And my prayer is that those who are watching and the listeners certainly are inspired by your faith story. I had somebody asked me the question when I was sharing with them that we're doing this for Bible study. What does that have to do with Bible study? So my famous transition is, I'm glad you asked. The church, first century church, was established on the faith story. Persons retelling their faith. They didn't have First and Second Corinthians in the first century church to read, and so the people compelled, they allowed people to hear their faith in the Jesus that of Nazareth, who was raised from the dead, and how that is impacting or inspiring in them. And they will come together and share the story that they heard and share how it impacted them. And in a real sense, that's what this is about. This segment is about sharing the ways that Jesus has impacted your life from a child into adulthood, and the way that it is helping you to navigate this crazy world where you can be discipled in your professional life. I want to conclude with giving you all an opportunity to have a last word. If there's something that you want to share with this group, I am just, again, overjoyed with you taking time to share with us. And so I want to go around the table, go around the grid. If there are any last words that you want to convey to those who are watching in terms of the impact or the influence of the church in your life.
I would just like to say that I am forever thankful for Saint Paul and what Saint Paul gave to me, as far as, you know, the teachings, the interactions with the community, and probably most importantly, just understanding where I am in the world is only just a very, very small piece to a larger puzzle. And I definitely would want to tell anyone that that is definitely something that St. Paul United Methodist Church instilled in me, and I'm forever thankful for.
It's awesome. It's awesome stuff. Everybody else? Final words.
Oh, so when I think about, St. Paul, I guess I mentioned something earlier. I guess I need to go back and spend a little bit more time on it. There's no separation between St. Paul and teachers, I mentioned, but there's also no separation between St. Paul and my family and my parents. All of those things that I referenced that St. Paul required of us, my parents in particular, my mother, who I think is listening on here, required of us as well. And Pastor, when you mentioned earlier that St. Paul was considered to be the church on the hill and that kind of thing. I mean, my parents required us to at least try to be the best. That God has given us so much that we are required to go out and be the best we possibly can be, and to share with the world as best we possibly can. And that sticks with me personally, professionally, in a family sense, in every possible way. It's, my mama required us to be the best. And to this day, as I look at anything big or small, that ray of sunshine guides me to just see if I can go out and be the best. And so, and that can transcends all disciplines, moral, professional, personal, and otherwise. So I have to stop a minute and just really thank my parents, in particular my mother, for requiring that of us, because that is an integral part of who I am and will always be till the day I die.
I would say, growing up in St. Paul, we didn't have to look far for role models. There are so many, strong women who have influenced my life through growing up in St. Paul. Women who managed, powerful careers, but also balanced family. We were taught to have pride, in ourselves and where we came from. There's rich history in St. Paul, rich Black history in St. Paul that we need to continue to talk about. The educators and the doctors and things like that came out of St. Paul that, have had a strong impact on the community that, like I said, we just didn't have to go far for role models. So, I am forever grateful for everything that St. Paul taught me. It was truly our village. Again, seeing scripture being put into practice about caring for people. That's extremely important in everything that we do, and especially in roles as being a leader. If I didn't have these positive influences of women that I know, have overcome challenges, I don't think that I would be as successful as I am today. And that's in my career as well as motherhood and other areas. So I'm just thankful for all of the people that, have wrapped their arms around us and made sure that we were on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I can remember sitting in the very back pew bench, and when Ron Dellums came to the St. Paul and he spoke, and he came back and in the back and shook my hand. So like I said, it was those influences that that St. Paul cultivated in all of us. I think is to because being a church on a hill, yes. I mean, it was one at the time was very influential, church in Meridian, of course, and like I said, all political leaders, and they used to flock to St. Paul, and so I gravitated towards that. Like I said, and of course, main thing is that my faith walk was strengthened. By seeing so many influential individuals around us, in so many different various walks of life, that you had to be great, and of course you had to be great, but you had to put Christ first too in order to ascend up that ladder too. So like I said, I'm just forever eternally grateful for the influences, and so thankful again to so many of the leaders that that came out of St. Paul. Of course, my parents pushing me every Sunday going there, some Sunday school all the way to transitioning to church services, opening up those folding doors that I see still exist there. But it's just a lasting impression, and I've always said that whenever I come back home, which is I hadn't been back to St. Paul in several years, but I gotta pay a visit, to my home church. So I'm just eternally thankful.
Man.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful for the upbringing and the positive influences that the church and the family have provided for me. As Gordon said, the church and the family are basically synonymous. We were taught the same things at home with my parents that we were inside of the church. My mother used to say a saying that my grandfather said: if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly bear. Be the best at whatever it is that you want to be. So I'm very thankful for the upbringing and seeing those positive influences, and seeing that I could do whatever I wanted to do as long as I got a good education and put my mind to it. Education was instilled in us. There was just no other way. I think being in St. Paul and being here in this family, that was the way of life. So I'm very grateful. I know I keep saying that, but I am.
This running theme, as I draw this to a conclusion, there's a running theme that I hope more will grab hold, and that's support. I heard village earlier. One of the things that is distinctive from with church kids versus others is this sense of support and the village that surrounds the individual that helps to, again, kind of reinforce, kind of give shape to identity, give shape to vocation, occupation. I can honestly say that before even entering into higher ed, before entering to a workforce, everything you all mentioned, public speaking, I did that at church. Before standing before anyone, I learned how to balance a checkbook, and I learned how to take minutes in junior high school because of the church. You know, I learned about a bill before that song that came on Saturday mornings, a cartoon. I had already learned about that at church. And I'm saying all that to say in this conclusion that, man, the Black church has offered more than just a worship experience. It truly has offered for many an extended family and a village and a support system that persons otherwise would not experience. And I hope sisters and brothers who are watching that you just kind of take note of these persons who are grown with have families who still reflect on their faith experience as children and still use that as a reference. And I want to thank you all. Just thank you. As I mentioned in the outset, you're busy, and I just truly appreciate you pausing for a moment to engage us in this conversation. We got a few more people that we're going to have a similar conversation with on next week. This is Saint Paul Reunion Month. And so we got some more people who will join us on next week to have this similar conversation. Once again, I'm grateful to you. I want to encourage those who are watching on either Facebook Live or YouTube Live, or those who are listening and watching on Zoom. One, I do thank you for doing so. I want to encourage you to take part in or watch the Black Church docuseries that's going to take place on PBS. I believe this is going to be the second segment, which continues to reinforce what is in our DNA and in terms of the influence on individuals as well as the influence on society. For those of you who would like to, I want to conclude. I also invite you to share with us at 7:30 for our Ash Wednesday service. It is Ash Wednesday. Today, Ash Wednesday kicks off or launches us into the Lent journey, the Lent season. That is comprised of 40 days that excludes Sunday. That is to include time of prayer and fasting. This day is a day that we reflect and remember our mortality, kind of take an inventory of those areas of our lives that need improvement, those things that we need to divest from our lives in an effort to live a life that's more pleasing to the Lord and more Christ-like. So in about 30 minutes, I want to invite you to join us right back for our Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and our Zoom number, for those of you who have it, will be the same. God bless you all. Mrs. Washington, Miss Sims, Mr. Crenshaw, Mr. Gordon, God be with you. As we say here at the Saint Paul United Methodist Church and Saint Paul, St. Elizabeth Faith Community during this pandemic, stay connected, stay inspired, stay in love with God. God be with you. And thank you all for this time.